Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Urban Scope Podcast, where we talk music, sports, and things of the sort. And today we will be discussing pretty much every aspect of that music, sports, and things of the sort today. Got a whole slew of topics today. First, I want to start off with the Boyz II Men news. So it looks like Boyz II Men are, as a group, are in talks with the production and financing companies, compelling pictures and primary wave for upcoming film and an upcoming documentary about the group. So there's very exciting news and positive news to start off with. Um, right now, there's no release date for the film or the documentary, but pretty soon that news should be coming down the line, maybe a year or two. They stated that they were looking for the perfect situation to put out their story, as well as that documentary to kind of encapsulate the group and the legendary group that was Boyz II Men, the Philly-based R&B group. So expect maybe within the next year or two for that release, or for at least more details to come out. Seems like they finally got the right situation to actually put out that documentary and that movie. Recently, a New Edition just came out with a kind of biopic TV show about their behind the scenes and how they got started and everything that they went through as a group, which was a good story. And multiple people could put out stories. I think BET put out one, and I forgot the other network that put out one. But it was a very good story. But like I said, every group doesn't have a Bobby Brown, which kind of brought the drama to the group and brought another dynamic to the group that most groups really, well, every group has kind of a Bobby Brown type character in it, but for their story, I think it really made their story more interesting. So I'm kind of excited to see where the Boyz II Men story will go, because I don't know much about their group members. They're pretty much silent and they're pretty much to themselves. But it was, a lot of people said back then they were kind of feeling themselves, and they were uh, kind of bougie or kind of standoffish to most other people that they felt was beneath them. So I want to see how. I'm pretty sure that side of the story won't come out, but because it's from their side, and they're actually, the group members are executive producers on that project too. So they're going to kind of paint the story they want to paint. The documentary as well, I believe they're executive producers on that as well. So, but being a fan of autobiographies and just people telling their story is is one of my favorite things, because we always see the finished product. We don't see what you did to get there, the struggles that you went through, your story. We don't get that what made you you, because a lot of times people are more respected for their story. So if you was spoon fed your whole life and you just happen to fall upon superstardom and fame and wealth, it's not as seen as much as when you came from the inner city youth struggling and you made your way up to the top. So I like to see those stories, no matter what the story is. If it's a spoon fed story, I want to see that story too. But the inner city youth struggle story is always one of my favorites. Just to seeing them pull them up from their bootstraps, having the odds against you, the cards stacked against you, to see them overcome that. So, um, them growing up in Philly, I'm pretty sure they went through a lot of different things. And then for them to be singers in a town that's pretty rough and tumble, I'm pretty sure they probably got picked on a lot of times, and they had to go through a lot of different things that most other R&B groups didn't have to go through. I know New Edition grew up in Boston, and they grew up. They had to deal with a lot of different things as well as singers in a tough town. I know most people don't think Boston's a tough town, but every city has a tough town in it somewhere. So, but just the impact on the culture that New Edition had was just tremendous. Back, they came out around, I think, 1985, so around the mid 80s until the probably later mid 90s. So they had about a 10-15 year run. What I remember most about Boyz II Men from growing up watching movies and TV shows is Boyz II Men, they made an appearance on Prince of Bel-Air back in the day. And then also like their music was on like House Party 2 and things like that. So their music was a part of the culture. Um, and just they were able to transcend not only just R&B, but they were able to reach the masses. Um, because sometimes as an R&B artist or hip hop artist, they want to kind of put you in a box of just being sold to the Black community and the Latino communities, but they were able to be embraced by the white community as well as the Black community and other minority groups. So I want to see how that story came along and how that came to be. Like I said, their voices were just legendary and unseen at that time. So they were able to transcend just not only the hip hop R&B realm, but just the pop culture itself. So like I said, that story, I'll keep an eye on that story and update it as it comes along, because I'm very excited about that. Um, so just talking about the transcension of music, I stumbled upon an article written about 50 Cent, his second album, The Massacre, how he talked about the sound had to change completely because when he dropped his second album, that was the time that the rapper The Game was introduced, and he was preparing his solo album, debut album, and he gave a lot of songs to the rapper The Game at that time. So, and he kind of notated how the Massacre album was his second album, but it didn't have woman any songs geared towards the women, any sexually explicit songs. It was mostly just gangster rap, and it might have some soft, soulful tunes on it, like Baltimore Love Thing and songs like that. But most of the songs were kind of hardcore, like Get in My Car and things like that, songs like that. So most of the album changed just because, he said that Hate It or Love It, which he's featured on with The Game, was initially supposed to be slated for the Massacre album, as well as How We Do, um, which is How We Do doesn't sound like a 50 Cent song to me anyway. Hate It or Love It does because he is featured on that song and has a big role in that song. But he kind of talked about that song too. He couldn't put it out because it didn't sound right because he was talking about his mom's sexual preference on that song. So he felt like for his second album, he wanted the album just to sound purely just pretty much, like the first album, pretty much. Because when you think about that time, this was around '05. Um, that was a follow up to the Get Rich or Die Trying album, which sold, went like 9 times platinum. So it was a lot of pressure on him to follow up because back then they had the whole sophomore jinx or sophomore slump label that went around, and it was big. It was a huge thing back then, and it's only a few artists that actually had a second album that was debatable, debatably better than the first album. Like a Nas's "It Was Written." Some people say that album was better than the Illmatic album, but for the most part, most artists take a step back on their second album, and I think it was a lot of pressure for him to recreate that first album, which you can't really do, and most people know you can't remake a classic album like that. The sound is gonna sound different. Like if you come out with Get Rich or Die Trying to right now, it's gonna sound totally different than it did back then. Like I said, he was in a different place financially, so the content would have been a lot different. He was hungrier back then. Not to say he's not hungry now, but it was just a different level of hungry back then. So everything he was putting out was from pure experience. Now his experiences are different, and a lot of artists make reference to your first album. They say your first album is always your best because it took your whole life to make. Your second album only, you drop that in a year or two tops, unless it's some artists who take a little layoff. Not to mention any specific artist, but your first album should be your best album because it took you your whole life to make, from all of your experiences. And then your second album, and as you go progress on album wise, you kind of lose more content because you kind of talked about it already. So him being honest about this album was uh, kind of apropos, kind of expected. But he never said it before, to my knowledge, and I found it kind of interesting because like back then in '05, he was he had a bunch of different rap beefs back then too. So he kind of criticized Ja Rule. Well, he didn't kind of, he did criticize Ja Rule for singing on his songs. So he didn't want to, I guess, seem like a hypocrite when that Massacre album came out. So everything he had to put out, he wanted to make sure it was opposite of what Ja Rule was doing. And like I said, their beef goes back decades. So, he was very strategic in the way he put out music. And he's a very strategic person in general. So it doesn't surprise me that he changed the sound of this album to make it sound different. So, um, but I think just from a general standpoint about this album too, that I wanted to make note of is his diversity in his music kind of made him transcend to pop culture, or introduced him into pop culture, because Get Rich or Die Trying was a very successful album, but the masses, when I say masses, people that are not hip hop fans, kind of noticed 50 Cent, when he got into acting gigs and stuff like that. But I think when he started doing songs like 21 Questions, when he started doing songs like Candy Shop and AO Technology with Justin Timberlake, people started, seeing him in a different light and started to seeing him as a sex symbol. And he started doing more interviews and started doing more gigs and stuff like that. Because every time 50 Cent has an interview, I look at it because he always give you a gem in it. Unlike Jay-Z, Jay-Z's more reserved and more like, listen to my music, the gem, the gems or the stones are in my music. But 50 Cent always gives you premium material as far as being successful, and just general advice in life that just hits different. He's one of the most intelligent rappers, I think, especially for the time period that he was out, and even now he just gets better with time. He's mostly in TV and film now. He kind of dibbles and dabbles out of music, just mostly for TV sakes, just to do theme songs and stuff like that for his shows. But he's still relevant today, and like I said, he's you know just his catalog of music and his catalog of everything is just going to leave behind a legacy that um, I think that'll last forever. So, um, speaking of legacy, which kind of going over to the pop culture side of things to talk about acting. So, kind of a bittersweet story, I guess. Denzel Washington he did an interview in reference to talking about the Gladiator 2 promotions and things like that, and which is out now, and he kind of talked about possibly retiring after his next slate of movies. So he basically talked about he had 4 or 5 movies set up to do, and then the Black Panther 3, he's supposed to have a role in that movie with Ryan Coogler. So he pretty much talked about after doing that movie and about 3 other movies, he plans to retire. But recently he did an interview with BuzzFeed and kind of talked about, kind of clarified what he meant. He kind of meant that he wasn't going to retire, but he was going to be more selective with his movies and going to do movies um, not as frequently as he used to. So, which I thought he's always been kind of selective with the movies that he does, because he's a he's a grade A top notch actor. So he's just not going to do any role where they just have him playing anything. Like for the most part he does meaningful roles, especially after doing the Malcolm X movie. He kind of ascended, and he kind of was in high demand. So he only does like these intricate roles where the character is more sophisticated and more than, it's not one dimensional. So um and it was kind of sad to hear him talk about it, because I didn't realize he was 69 years old. The selfish part of me just thought he would be doing movies forever, and I never thought about him actually thought about retirement, because like I said, I never thought about his age. I only thought about the work that he did. So and from an actor standpoint, like I'm not an expert in acting or anything, but his range was just something I always took knowledge of, because he played so many different characters and so many different roles that at this point he could play Donald Trump and I would believe him as Donald Trump, even though, he's obviously a different color. So when you think about him playing a dirty cop in Training Day, or him playing a passionate father, concerned father in John Q, or being playing the great activist orator Malcolm X, or him just being a coach on Remember the Titans. Those roles that he played were so different from each other for the most part. Most of them were autobiographical, but when you think about it, like, just to be able to go back and forth like that, most actors now are probably typecasted where they're playing either a gangster role or they're playing some kind of sensitive gender role or something like that. They're not purely playing different characters and being all over the place. So that skill set that he had was unmatched, and like, he's always been my favorite actor against any actor that you want to put him against. So like I said, I'll debate anybody with Denzel Washington over anybody else as far as acting goes. Um, like I said, he's one of the, I think, godfathers of the acting. Like, there's been a lot of actors before him, like a Sidney Poitier and things like that, and Jack Nicholson and people like that. But I think he was able to take it to the next level, to have the catalog that he has. And I was shocked when I looked it up. He only has 63. He did 63 movies as an actor, which I thought would have been way more than that. Like, but maybe I, was thinking in the terms of a Samuel L. Jackson, who probably did 200 plus movies because he's done so many movies. But he's more of an actor that has range as well. But he pretty much plays a loud character every time. Denzel can play a loud character, quiet character, reserved, obnoxious character. It's just different levels to what he's doing. So, like I said, it'll be sad to see him retire one day, or step away from acting. But there will always be a place for him in acting. So I started to think about my top 5 Denzel movies of all time, just from my opinion. So first, I thought about Training Day, which was loosely based on a true story about the dirty cop from California. He actually won an Oscar for that movie. So, like I said, that's one of my favorite movies. I can always watch that movie and it never gets old. Flight, which is the movie he played as a pilot, as an alcoholic pilot who um, saves a bunch of people uh, from a tragic plane crash. Which, not to go too much in it, but it's an older movie. But he played a totally different character, and even in that movie, he said he gaining some weight just to portray an alcoholic and to be able to look more realistic in the character. And then American Gangster was based on a true story, just like Malcolm X was, which I'll get into next. Which he played Frank Lucas, the crime boss from New York. Like I said, he played another different role where he played a gangster. He was more relentless and he was fearless and he had to be all these different things. So I like that movie as well. Like I said, I just said Malcolm X, which he played, the activist order, Malcolm X, which was one of my favorite leaders of all time. He played that movie, and I think he should have won an Emmy for that movie, which he did not, which is still a head scratcher to this day why he didn't win for that movie. But, we know why he didn't win for that movie, because of the person who he portrayed. Um, and that's just my opinion. But, and then lastly, Remember the Titans, which is another, based on a true story event, when he played this coach who goes to an integrated school right after segregation was kind of abolished in Virginia. So that's like, that movie, I cry every time I watch that movie, because like I said, it's still relevant to today society about, just gender role, just the way race is played, and even more today in the recent, probably 8 years or so, the way it is. So like I said, that movie was just good to me, and just the autobiography of that story and everyone's personal story, not just Denzel's character, but every character in that movie, or in that story, I should say, was just interesting. So those were my top 5 Denzel movies. So like I said, I'm excited to actually see him actually come to get some rest, and actually, spend more time, I guess, with his family. But, at the age of almost 70 years old, he put in a lot of work, so he does deserve a break. So um, hopefully, he'll put out a couple of more movies before he goes, and we'll be able to see him, be able to put his work together and watch it one day. So, um, kind of switching gears to sports. So, Russell Wilson, with the Steelers right now is on a roll. They're on a 3-game winning streak with Russell Wilson at the helm. Um, and they're leading the AFC North right now with a 7-2 record. They do play the Baltimore Ravens tomorrow. So, that'll be for the division lead, whoever wins that game. So, um, I think I'm just excited about Russell Wilson being able to get rid of the stigma of him not, being washed and him not being the same guy anymore. He might not be the same guy anymore, but he's able to still uh, be efficient or still be able to lead a team. Um, right now, he only played 3 games this year due to the injury he had at the beginning of the season. After Justin Fields had the quarterback position, and he led from the last 3 games. So he's completing almost 60% of his passes, which is not awesome, but he has 6 touchdowns to 1 interception, which is a good thing. He's not turning the football over. He's not blowing anyone's socks away, but he is playing efficient at the position and not turning the football over. And for the Steelers, with the defense that they have, that's the most that you can ask out of them is the quarterback is just don't turn the football over and put the defense in a bad spot, because the defense that they have, if you have to go 70, 80 yards, it's going to be tough for any offense to do that against them. So what Russell Wilson is doing is an efficient job. Like the Jets, if they had Russell Wilson last year playing like this, they might have went to the playoffs and beyond. So, um, like I said, Russell Wilson, it's nice to see the good guy um, actually actually prevail in the society today, especially what's been going over the last months or so. The bad guys you know, kind of being highlighted and praised, even in, pop culture. You got bad guys like the villain, I mean, not the villain, but the Penguin has his own TV show now. You have guys like Thanos that was being celebrated for the Avengers movies, and the Joker has a couple movies now. Back in the days, the bad guy was the bad guy. You hated the bad guy, and nobody wants to see his own show or own movie. But now it's more praised for the bad guy. So it's nice to see the good guy like Russell Wilson be able to, um, just to be able to prevail and be able to succeed despite the hate that people have. He had a rough time in Denver. He had got the big contract, didn't play as well, was in a bad predicament, especially when they brought in the coach Sean Payton. When they brought him in, Sean Payton had a agenda out to be like, well, I'm gonna make him, basically, if he doesn't play the way I want him to, he's gonna leave. And Russell Wilson took unnecessary shots and hits uh, from the fans in Denver when Sean Payton got there. And some of his stuff was self-inflicted. Like they said, he was kind of a prima donna. But when you get paid that much, most of the athletes and stuff kind of have an ego, and quarterbacks as well have egos bigger than most people think, but they just are more politically correct in media. So most people don't see it. But, if you're making that much money, you're pretty much going to have an ego. Um, it doesn't make you have an ego. It probably just increases your ego. So, but just for him to be able to still hold on to the job, especially after Fields was doing he was doing pretty good when he had it too. But he wasn't playing, like I said, he wasn't playing better than Russell Wilson, but he was playing efficient enough that they were, in the top of the division, especially with uh, Cincinnati kind of falling back and Cleveland looking pretty bad. The Ohio teams are looking pretty bad in that division, but Baltimore and Lamar Jackson are just running away with everything right now. Uh, like I said, Derrick Henry is helping that backfield out, and you're going to need a good defense to kind of slow Derrick Henry down and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is on a roll right now to winning his 3rd MVP, and if he win a 3rd MVP, I mean, he's already Hall of Fame already, I think. But if he gets another MVP, it'll just cement it. He doesn't even need a Super Bowl at that point. Um, but just I always been a fan of Russell Wilson, and I always thought, at one point when Mahomes was at his height with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, I always thought that Russell Wilson was doing just as good a job. He didn't have as much help as Patrick Mahomes, but he was still able to be up there with the numbers and just up there in the play. And he was getting his team to the playoffs every year with, I can't name any of his receivers, maybe a Doug Baldwin or Tyler Lockett, maybe, but those guys were like 5'10", I believe. So he didn't really have a lot of help. He had to scramble around in the pocket, and eventually, like, all that running in the backfield caught up to him, and taking all those hits from all these 300-pound, 250-pound linemen kind of caught up to him. So it'll catch up to you eventually. So, but kudos to Russell Wilson for his play and being able to get to where he is now, and we'll see where he goes from there. So, my last topic of today, I wanted to talk about something that I talked about before with my top 5 rappers from Memphis. So I made a couple lists of my top 5 greatest, but this list I had to really sit down and think about it, because most of the Memphis rappers that I thought about were affiliated with some kind of group or some kind of duo. So I was still able to pick my top 5 rappers and just pick the ones I wanted out of the group, even though both of those pieces together made the group, I think, and you can't really separate them. But I just went off of verses and style and impact of just the ones that I've picked out of the group. So without further ado, my top 5 rappers, and I have them in order, and it's not a particular. So when I picked, it was mostly off of impact, style, and the catalog. So the impact, so what they gave to not only just hip hop, but to the city of Memphis, as far as just being a mogul, being a creator, being able to make records for other people, being able to just be an all-around Swiss Army knife. Just not just about your rap game, but what can you bring to the table? Who can you put on? Who can you make other records for? Who can you provide for? Who can you say you help establish? So that's what the impact. And the style is just strictly off rapping ability alone. And then catalog is just how long were you able to sustain in the game, and how were you able to, how many pieces of work that you put out. And I'll kind of get into catalog with one of the guys because he didn't get the chance to put out a extensive catalogs to other artists for obvious reasons. But my first, so the greatest rapper of all time in Memphis. Now it's just not strictly off rap style; it's off everything. So I had Juicy J, who was obviously in 3 6 Mafia. Not only did he rap, but he was a producer as well, and he's still producing now. And the artists he was able to put on and make better with his production, like I said, it goes unnoticed. But I've been able to see it and like sat down and thought about it, and from what I can see, Juicy J is probably the top rated rapper in Memphis, and he's still active today, and he's still able to put out more music today and productions, and what he did for 3 6 Mafia and other artists coming out of Memphis and just other places. Like I said, it's untouched. So I would have Juicy J at the number 1 spot. So number 2, which most people probably don't know, is Project Pat. So not only is Project Pat affiliated with 3 6 Mafia, and kind of a part of it too. His relatability, just the lyrics, like he wasn't the most lyrical, but the things he would say, you would get it. He was witty too. So the things he would say you could relate to and you would laugh at as well. And like I said, the production he had from Juicy J mostly kind of exacerbated his rap style and his flow, and the way he was able to just be so it's simplistic, but it was efficient. So that was my second greatest rapper from Memphis, Project Pat. So the third is Yo Gotti. Like I said, his catalog going back to, I believe, the late 90s, maybe mid 90s. and it took him a while to get into the majors. But when he got there, I believe he was with Cash Money when he first got up, into to the big leagues. But he had his own record label, I believe I&E. But now, he has his own label, and like I said, Impact. He's able to sign a Glorilla who's like tearing up the charts right now. He's able to put out a Black Youngster. He's able to put out a Moneybagg Yo, which is one of my favorite rappers. But like I said, he doesn't have the catalog right now, and I think a lot of his features kind of make his songs to me. But he's a very good rapper as well. Um, just Yo Gotti's ability, like I said, an impact as well. The charitable work he does in Memphis, and the restaurant that he put in Memphis, and the real estate that he owns, and just who he is as uh, just as a Memphis legend. Like I said, he's been getting a lot of flack the last couple of years, but like I said, his catalog is his catalog, and the work that he put out is just uh, it's just top notch in Memphis and just hip hop in general. So, and then next, when I talked about impact, this person doesn't have a catalog, but they do have impact, and they do have a style that was unique in Memphis. And I think he's one of the most lyrical rappers in Memphis. Most of Memphis rap is gangster rap based and kind of drill music. But Young Dolph, he tragically lost his life early, but he did put out quite a few projects, for his age and for the length of time that he was out. Like I said, he doesn't have the full catalog like a Yo Gotti or Juicy J or even a Project Pat, but it's kind of a Notorious B.I.G. situation where he only put out 2 albums, but like I said, his music was timeless and it'll live on, and the lyrical style was just different. Especially coming from Memphis, he was able to put out music that it's just not common with Memphis practice. So, Young Dolph is one of my favorite rappers for that reason. Like I said, he doesn't have the catalog, but the style is there, the impact is there, the charitable works that he did for Memphis, and unfortunately, he tragically lost his life too early. And I think if he would have still been here today, like what he would have been able to do with music would have just been the biggest thing that Memphis would have ever seen. So, like I said, unfortunately, like we'll never know what that would have looked like. But like I said, his flow was and just the impact of him and everything that was Young Dolph. And that's my brother Josh's favorite artist from Memphis. And I know he's still, he's very passionate about Young Dolph and um, what Young Dolph brought to not just only hip hop, but to the youth. A lot of people kids looked up to Young Dolph, and like I said, unfortunately, in our communities, when you go back to our communities, they don't always embrace you that way, and it's always envy. Well, there's sometimes envy, and kind of gets in the way of your success and so ultimately your life sometimes. So, um, and then lastly, which might be a shock to most people, 8 Ball from the group 8 Ball and MJG. It's my fifth listed rapper. Now, the fifth spot was kind of difficult because I had to pick between 8 Ball and MJG. And the only reason I picked 8 Ball over MJG is just because of, I think, the way the wordplay that, or the vividness to paint a picture that 8 Ball was able to do. So when you're an artist, whether it be music or you painting pictures, you have to paint a vivid picture for everyone to see, for everyone to feel. And I feel that when 8 Ball raps, he paints a picture that you can see. He can rap about being in the club, and you can imagine the people there. You can imagine what's being served. You can imagine the vibe. He's able to do that from such a smooth position. Like I said, he probably didn't have a lot of impact, but like I said, his flow and his catalog, like he didn't drop any solo projects or anything because, like I said, he was in a group. But just from through the different things, like I said, he started in the early '90s and put out projects, recently as a couple of years, I believe. But 8 Ball isn't a rapper. It's just, like I said, he's a part of a group, so it makes it kind of difficult to pick him apart. Kind of like Andre 3000, being attached to Big Boy and Outkast. It's real difficult to do that, but If I had to pick one, it would be 8 Ball, just because of his pen, what he's able to, the way, like I said, I always say this: it's not how you say it, but it's not that you say it, but it's how you say it. So two people can say the same thing, but if I can paint it a different way, people can feel it more, people can relate more. So he was more of a relatable artist, I think, than his counterpart in MJG. So that is my list of my top 5 greatest rappers. Let me know what your top 5 rappers from Memphis are. I know most people aren't from Memphis that'll probably hear this, but uh, when you look at it, there's a lot of rappers from Memphis that you know that you probably didn't know were from Memphis. So, but just let me know about that. I'll put up a survey on the podcast on the YouTube site, and you can just pick out of a survey your favorite artist from Memphis. So I'll leave a spot for other, so you can fill in the blank. Um, but thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Urban Scope Podcast, where we talk music, sports, and things of the sort. And I'll see you next time.